General ethical standards and procedures. We subscribe to the following general ethical standards and procedures as we conduct ourselves in the various aspects of our professional and scholarly activities as psychologists. These general standards and procedures refer to 1. How we resolve ethical issues in our professional lives and communities. 2. How we adhere to the highest standards of professional competence. 3. How we respect for the rights and dignity of our clients, our peers, our students, and our other stakeholders in the profession and scientific discipline. 4. How we maintain confidentiality in the important aspects of our professional and scholarly functions. 5. How we ensure truthfulness and accuracy in all our public statement. And 6. How we observe professionalism in our records and fees. 1. Resolving ethical issues. Misuse of psychologists' works. In instances where misuse or misrepresentation of our work comes to our attention, we take appropriate and reasonable steps to correct or minimize effects of such misuse or misrepresentation. 2. Conflicts between ethics and law, regulations, or other governing legal authority. In instances where our code of ethics conflicts with the law, regulations, or governing legal authority, our first step is to take appropriate actions to resolve the conflicts while being committed to our code of ethics. However, if the conflicts cannot be resolved by such means, we adhere to the law, regulations, or governing legal authority. 3. Conflicts between ethics and organizational demands. In instances where our code of ethics conflicts with organizational demands, we make our code of ethics known to the organization. We also declare our commitment and adherence to this code when resolving the conflicts. 4. Informal resolution of ethical violations. When we become aware that another psychologist violated our code of ethics, we may resolve the issue by bringing it to the attention of the psychologist. We do so if informal resolution is sufficient and if the intervention does not violate confidentiality rights. 5. Reporting ethical violations. If there is likely to have substantial harm to a person or organization, we take further action to report violation of the Code of Ethics to appropriate institutional authorities. However, this does not apply when an intervention would violate confidentiality rights or when we are called to review the work of another psychologist whose professional conduct is in question. 6. Cooperating with Ethics Committee. We cooperate with the ethics investigation, proceedings, and requirements of any psychological association we belong to. Improper complaints. We refrain from filing ethical complaints with reckless disregard or willful ignorance of facts that would disprove allegations and ethical violations. We also refrain from filing complaints without supporting factual evidence. Unfair discrimination against complainants and respondents. First, we do not discriminate against complainants and respondents of ethical complaints by denying them employment, advancement, admissions to academic, tenure, or promotion. Second, this does not rule out taking appropriate actions based on outcomes of proceedings. Competencies, boundaries of competence. 1. We shall provide services, teach, and conduct research with persons, populations in areas only within the boundaries of our competence, based on our education, training, supervised internship, consultation, tour study, or professional experience. 2. We shall make appropriate referrals, except as provided in Standard A.2, providing services in emergencies where our existing competencies are not sufficient to ensure effective implementation or provision of our services. 3. When we plan to provide services, teach, or conduct research involving populations, areas, techniques, or technologies that are new to us and are beyond our existing competence, we must undertake relevant education, training, supervised experience, consultation, or thorough study. 4th, so as not to deprive individuals or groups of necessary services which we do not have existing competence, we may provide the service as long as we have closely related prior training or experience. And B, we make a reasonable effort to obtain the competence required by undergoing relevant research, training, consultation, or thorough study. 5. In those emerging areas in which generally recognized standards for preparatory training do not yet exist, but in which we are required or requested to make available our services, we shall take reasonable steps to ensure the competence of our work, to protect our clients or patients, students, supervisees, research participants, organizational clients, and others from harm. We shall be reasonable familiar or not reasonable familiar. We shall be reasonably familiar with the relevant judicial or administrative rules when assuming forensic roles. B. Providing services in emergencies. We shall make available our services in emergency situations to individuals for whom the necessary mental health services are not available even if we lack the training appropriate to the case, to ensure these individuals are not deprived of the emergency services they require at that time. However, we shall immediately discontinue said services as soon as the emergency has ended and ensure that appropriate competent services are made available. C. Maintaining competence. We shall undertake continuing education and training to ensure our services continue to be relevant and applicable. D. Basis for scientific and professional judgments. We shall base our work upon established scientific and professional knowledge of the discipline. See also Standards 2.A E Boundaries of Competence, 8.B Informed Consent to Therapy, 5.A Avoiding of False Deceptive Statements, 5.C Workshops, seminars, and non-degree granting educational programs. 7.E Interpreting Assessment Results. 7.G Explaining Assessment Results. 8.F Competence Practice. 9.C Accuracy in Teaching. E. Delegation of work to others. In cases where we shall have to delegate work to employees, supervisees, or research or teaching assistants, or when using the services of others, such interpreters, we shall take reasonable steps to: first, avoid delegating such work to persons who have a multiple relationship with those being served that would likely lead to exploitation or loss of objectivity. 2. Authorize only those responsibilities that such persons can be affected or not affected can be expected to perform competently on the basis of their education, training, or experience, either independently or with the level of supervision being provided. And 3. See that such persons perform the services competently. See also Standards 2.B Providing Services in Emergencies, 3.E Multiple Relationships, 5.A Maintaining Confidentiality, 7.A Basis for Assessment, 7.C Use of Assessment Tools, 7.B Informed Consent in Assessments, 7.1 Assessment by Unqualified Persons, and 10.F Offering Inducements for Research Participation. F. Personal problems and conflicts. We shall refrain from initiating an activity when we know or anticipate that there is a substantial likelihood that our personal problems will prevent us performing work-related activities in a competent manner. Second, when we shall become aware of personal problems that may interfere with performing work-related duties adequately, we shall take appropriate measures such as obtaining professional consultation or assistance, and determine whether we should limit, suspend, or terminate these work-related duties. See also Standard 10.10 Terminating Therapy. 3. Human Relations. Next, unfair discrimination. In our work-related activities, we shall not discriminate against persons based on age, gender identity, race, ethnicity, culture, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, socio-economic status, or on any basis prescribed by law. Sexual harassment. We do not engage in sexual harassment as defined in the Philippine Anti-Sexual Harassment Act, RA number 7877. Other harassment. We shall not knowingly harass or demean persons with whom we interact in our work on the basis of those persons' age, sex, gender identity, race, ethnicity, culture, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, disability, language, or socio-economic status. Avoiding harm. We shall take reasonable steps to avoid harming our clients or patients, students, supervisees, research participants, organizational clients, and others with whom we work, and to minimize harm where it is foreseeable but unavoidable. Multiple relationships. First, we shall refrain from entering into a multiple relationship if the multiple relationships could reasonably be expected to impair our objectivity, competence, or effectiveness in performing our functions as psychologists, or otherwise risk exploitation or harm to the person with whom our professional relationship exists. The multiple relationship occurs when a psychologist is in a professional role with a person and at the same time, one is in another role with the same person, or two is in a relationship with a person closely associated with or related to the person with whom the psychologist has the professional relationship, or three, promises to enter into a future relationship with that client or patient or a person closely associated with or related to that client or patient. If, however, we shall find that due to unforeseen factors, a potentially harmful multiple relationship has arisen, we shall take reasonable steps to resolve it with regard for the best interest of the affected person and maximum compliance with the ethics code. Second, when we shall be required by law, institutional policy, or extraordinary circumstances to serve in more than one role in judicial or administrative proceedings, at the outset we shall endeavor to inform the authorities about our code of ethics to clarify role expectations and extent of confidentiality, and thereafter as changes occur, see also standards 3.d avoiding harm and 3.g third-party request of services. Conflict of interest. We shall refrain from taking on a professional role when personal, scientific, professional, legal, financial, or other interest or relationship could reasonably be expected to 1. Impair our objectivity, competence, or effectiveness in performing our functions as psychologists, or 2. Expose the person or organization with whom our professional relationship exists to harm or to exploitation. Third-party request for services. When we agree to provide services to a person or entity at the request of a third party, we shall attempt to clarify at the outset of the service the nature of the relationship with all individuals or organizations involved. This clarification includes our expected role, given example, therapist, consultant, diagnostician, or expert witness. An identification of who is the client, the probable uses of the services provided or the information obtained, and the fact that there may be limits to confidentiality. See also standards 2.b providing services in emergencies, 3.e multiple relationships, 4.b limitations of confidentiality, 4.g use of confidential information for other purposes, 7.b see informed consent in assessment, 7.g explaining assessment results, 8.a confidentiality, X.0 or 10.0 sharing research data for verification, and 10.3 reviewers. G. Exploitative relationships. We shall not exploit persons over whom we have supervisory, evaluative, or other authority such as clients, patients, students, supervisees, research participants, and employees. H. Cooperation with other professionals. Whenever necessary and professionally appropriate, we shall cooperate with other professionals in order to serve our clients or patients effectively and appropriately. I. Informed consent. First, when conducting research or providing assessment, therapy, counseling, or consulting services in person or via electronic transmission or other forms of communication, we shall obtain the informed consent of the individual or individuals using language that is reasonably understandable to that person or persons, except when conducting such activities without consent is mandated by law or governmental regulation or as other provided in this ethics code. See also standards 8.02 informed consent to research, 9.03 informed consent in assessments, and 10.01 informed consent to therapy. Second, for persons who are legally incapable of giving informed consent, we shall nevertheless A. Provide an appropriate explanation, B. Seek the individual's assent, C. Consider such person's preferences and best interests, and D. Obtain appropriate permission from a legally authorized person if such substitute consent is permitted or required by law. When consent by a legally authorized person is not permitted or required by law, we shall take reasonable steps to protect the individual's rights and welfare. Third, when psychological services are court-ordered or otherwise mandated, we shall inform the individual of the nature of the anticipated services, including whether the services are court-ordered or mandated and any limits of confidentiality before proceeding. Fourth, we shall appropriately document written or oral consent, permission, and assent. See also Standards 8.02 Informed Consent to Research, 9.03 Informed Consent in Assessments, and 10.01 Informed Consent to Therapy. J. Psychological services delivered to or through organizations. When delivering services to or through organizations, we shall provide information beforehand to clients and when appropriate to those directly affected by the services about 1. The nature and objectives of the services. 2. The intended recipients. 3. Which of the individuals are clients. 4. The relationship we will have with each person and the organization. 5. The probable uses of the services provided and information obtained. 6. Who will have access to the information. And 7. Limits of confidentiality. As soon as feasible, we shall provide information about the results of the conclusions of such services to appropriate persons. In the event that we are precluded by law or by organizational rules from providing such information to particular individuals or groups, we shall so inform those individuals or groups at the outset of the service. K. Interruption of psychological services. Unless otherwise covered by contract, we shall make reasonable efforts to plan for facilitating services in the event that psychological services are interrupted by factors such as illness, death, unavailability, relocation, or retirement, or by clients' or patients' relocation or financial limitations. See also Standard 6.02 C. Maintenance, dissemination, and disposal of confidential records of professional and scientific work. 4. Confidentiality. A. Maintaining confidentiality. It is our duty to safeguard any information divulged by our clients regardless of the medium where it was stored. It is also our duty to make sure that this information is secured and is not placed in areas, spaces, or computers easily accessible to other unqualified persons. B. Limitations of confidentiality. First, it is our duty to discuss the limitations of confidentiality to our clients, may it be due to regulated laws, institutional rules, or professional or scientific relationship. In cases where the client is a minor or is legally incapable of giving informed consent, the primary guardian or legal representative should be informed about the limitations of confidentiality. Second, before the actual interview session or any other related psychological activities, we explain explicitly to the client all anticipated uses of the information they will disclose. Third, we may release information to appropriate individuals or authorities only after careful deliberation or when there is imminent danger to the individual and community. In court cases, information should be limited only to those pertinent to the legitimate request of the court. Fourth, if the psychological services, products, or information is coursed through an electronic transmission, it is our duty to inform the clients of risk to privacy. C. Recording. It is our duty to obtain permission from clients or their legal representatives before recording the voices or images of the clients. Before the actual recording, we explain explicitly all anticipated uses of recorded voices or images of the clients. See also Section 7.b PAP Code of Ethics, page 13. D. Minimizing invasions of privacy. First, when we consult cases when our colleagues or make written and oral reports, we only reveal information that is relevant to the purpose for which the communication is made. Second, we discuss confidential information we obtained from our work only to persons clearly concerned or only for scientific, medical, and professional purposes. E. Disclosures. First, we take reasonable steps to ensure that information to be disclosed will not be misused, misunderstood, or misinterpreted to infringe on human rights, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Second, we may disclose confidential information only when the client or legal representative gave their consent unless it is prohibited by law. Third, we may disclose confidential information only to the source of referral and with the written permission from the client if it is self-referral. Fourth, we may disclose confidential information without the consent of the client or legal representative only when it is mandated by law or permitted by law for valid purposes, such as A. When professional services are needed to be provided. B. When appropriate professional consultations are needed to be obtained. C. When the client's psychologist or others are needed to be protected from harm. And D. When payments for psychological services are needed to be obtained from a client who does not pay for services as agreed. See also Section 6. However, the extent to which we divulge information is limited to what is only needed to achieve the purpose. When confidential information is needed to be shared with schools, organizations, social agencies, or industry, we make sure that only qualified psychologists will supervise such releases. Information gathered from school, hospital, office, or organization becomes part of the institution where it was obtained. Release of such information becomes confidential and may be acquired only with prior approval from management. F. Consultation. We do not discuss with our colleagues or other professionals confidential information that could lead to the identification of the client unless the client gave consent or the disclosure cannot be avoided. When we seek second opinion from our colleagues or other professionals, we make sure that the extent to which we disclose information is limited to what is only needed to achieve the purpose. G. Use of confidential information for other purposes. We do not reveal confidential and personally identifiable information of our clients in our writings, lectures, classroom discussions, or other public media unless the client or legal representative consented in writing. There is legal authorization or we take reasonable steps to adequately disguise the client. 5. Advertisements and public statements. Avoidance of false or deceptive statements. As developer or promoter of psychological advices, programs, books, or other products, we make sure that announcements include scientifically acceptable and factually informative material, and that these are presented in a highly professional manner without any trace of sensationalism, exaggeration, or superficiality. Announcements may include but is not limited to paid or unpaid advertisement, product endorsements, grant applications, licensing applications, other credentialing applications, printed matter, personal resumes or curriculum vitae, or comments for use in media such as print or electronic transmission. Statements in legal proceedings, lectures, and public oral presentations and published materials. Announcements through telephone listings, brochures, and calling cards for professional services may include such information as name, highest relevant academic degrees earned, certification status, address, contact numbers, office hours, and a brief listing of the type of psychological services or programs offered with appropriate presentations of the information. In all spoken, written, printed communications or electronic transmission, we do not make false, deceptive, or fraudulent statements concerning ourselves or our colleagues. Training, experience, or competence, academic degrees, credentials, qualifications, institutional or association affiliations, services, scientific or clinical basis for or results or degree of success of our services, fees, publications, or research findings. We ensure that we do not use descriptions or information that could be misinterpreted, and we act quickly to correct such misinterpretation. 4. We claim degrees as credentials for our psychological services only if these degrees were earned from a CHED-recognized educational program or from accredited foreign educational programs. B. Public statements. 1. In all written or oral communication, we use language that conveys respect for the dignity of others. 2. We ensure that we communicate as accurately and objective as possible, and we clearly distinguish facts, opinions, theories, hypotheses, and ideas when conveying knowledge, findings, and views. We act quickly to correct any misinterpretation or misconception. 3. When making public statements or when involved in public activities, we clearly state whether we are representing ourselves as private citizens, as members of specific organizations or groups, or as representative of the discipline of psychology. 4. We do not seek personal gain by recommending the purchase or use of any product, activities, or service to the general public, especially when participating in commercial announcements, advertisements, television, or radio programs. 5. We do not seek personal interest, and we retain professional responsibility when engaging others to create public statements about our professional practice, products, or activities. 6. We shall not compensate or give anything of value to the representatives or employees of the press, radio, television, electronic transmission, or other communication medium in anticipation of or in return for professional publicity in a news item. 7. Unless it is a paid advertisement regarding our psychological services and programs, then we must make sure that it is clearly identified and recognizable. We abide by professional rather than commercial practices when making known our services. 8. We do not give degrading comments about others, such as demeaning jokes about one's culture, nationality, ethnicity, color, race, religion, sex, gender identity, disability, social economic status, or sexual orientation. 9. We avoid any comparative denigration of the services of other psychologists or practitioners from other professions. We do not claim that our services are of superlative quality or that we give better services than others. 10. Neither do we advertise, claim, or imply the certainty of cure for any conditions to be treated, nor the certainty of success of our psychological services. 11. We do not advertise or offer refund of money to dissatisfied users of our psychological services. C. Workshops, seminars, and non-degree granting educational programs. It is our duty to ensure that our announcements, brochures, catalogs, or advertisements describing workshops, seminars, or other non-degree granting educational programs describe accurately the audience for which the program is intended, the educational objectives, the presenters, and the fees involved. It is also our duty to ensure that no misrepresentation is made. D. Media presentations. We are cautious when we provide public advice or comment through printed materials, radio or television programs, internet or other electronic transmission to ensure that our statements are, first, based on our professional knowledge, training, or experience in accord with appropriate psychological literature and practice. 2. Consistent with this code of ethics, and 3. Not indicative that a professional relationship has been established with the recipient. E. Testimonials. We do not ask for testimonials from current and past clients, their legal representatives, or other persons who, due to certain situations, might be vulnerable to undue influence of our psychological services, activities, or programs. 6. Records and fees. A. Documentation and maintenance of records. We create records and data relating to our professional and scientific work in order to, first, facilitate provision of services by ourselves or by other professionals. 2. Allow for replication and evaluation through our research. 3. Meet institutional requirements. 4. Ensure accuracy of billing and payments. And 5. Ensure compliance with relevant laws. Whenever possible, we take responsibility for maintaining, disseminating, storing, retaining, and disposing of such records and data. B. Confidentiality of records. 1. We maintain confidentiality in creating, storing, accessing, transferring, and disposing of our records in whatever form or media these are encoded and stored. 2. When confidential information is entered into databases or other systems that are available to other people, we use codes and other techniques to avoid the inclusion of any personal identifiers. 3. In the event that we withdraw from a position or practice, we make advanced plans to facilitate the appropriate transfer and to protect the confidentiality of records and data. C. Withholding client records. We may not withhold records that are requested and needed by and for a client's emergency treatment solely because payment has not been received. D. Fees and financial arrangements. We reach an agreement with the recipients of our psychological services specifying compensation and billing arrangements as early as is feasible in the professional relationship. We do not misrepresent our fees. Therapy. A. Confidentiality. 1. With regard, confidentiality is an obligation that arises from our client's trust. We therefore restrict disclosure of information about our clients except in instances when mandated or regulated by the law. 2. For evaluation purposes, we discuss the results of clinical and counseling relationships with our colleagues concerning materials that will not constitute undue invasion of privacy. 3. We release information to appropriate individuals or authorities only after careful deliberation or when there is imminent danger to the individual and the community. In court cases, data should be limited only to those pertinent to the legitimate request of the court. What is personality? McClellan, 1951. The most adequate conceptualization of a person's behavior in all its detail. Menninger, 1953. Individual as a whole, his height and weight and love and hates and blood pressure and reflexes. It means all that anyone is and that he is trying to become. Personality. Byrne, BYRNE, Psychology's Garbage Bin. In that any research in which it doesn't fit other existing categories can be labeled personality. As an individual's unique constellation of psychological traits relatively that is stable over time. Personality assessment. Measurement and evaluation of psychological traits, states, values, interests, attitudes, worldview, acculturation, sense of humor, cognitive and behavioral style, and or related individual characteristics. Personality traits. Any distinguishable, relatively enduring way in which one individual varies from another. Friendly, rude. Personality types. A constellation of traits that is similar in pattern to one identified category of personality within a taxonomy of personalities. Personality state, relatively temporary disposition. Butterflies in my stomach before asking someone for a trait or state. Some basic questions: who is doing the assessing? Self as primary referent, to learn something about who they are. Self-report, a process wherein info about assessees is supplied by the assessees themselves. Self-concept, one's attitudes, beliefs, opinions, and related thoughts about oneself. Another person as the referent. In some situations, the best available method for the assessment of personality, behavior, or both involves reporting by a third party. Halo effect, variety of favorable response bias. Example, cultural background of assessees, how fair or generalizable is a particular instrument or measurement technique with a member of a particular cultural group. How the test was developed and administered. Culturally informed psychological assessment. What is assessed when a personality assessment is conducted? Primary content area sampled. Some tests are designed to measure particular traits such as introversion or states such as test anxiety. Test taker response styles. First response style, to respond to a test item or interview question in some characteristic manner regardless of the content of the item or question. Second, impression management, the selective exposure of some information or suppression of other information. Third, validity scale, subscale of a test designed to assist in judgments regarding how honestly the test taker respond. Where are personality assessments conducted? Traditional sites, schools, clinics, hospitals, academic research, laboratories, employment counseling, vocational selection centers, offices of psychologists and counselors. Natural settings, assess his own home, assess his prison cell. How are personality assessments structured and conducted? Scope and theory. It may vary, seeking to take a kind of general inventory of an individual's personality. Locus of control, locus, place, or site.